Documents from 81 people and organizations in the president's orbit alleging obstruction of justice by the president and other abuses of power. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Fox News analyst and co-host of Benson and Harf on Fox News Radio. Marie Harf is here. Kennedy on the Fox Business Network. Kennedy is on Outnumbered right now.
Yeah.
And in the center seat, ready to go, Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends and host of the Brian Kilmeade radio show. And the resume is so much longer, but we only have an hour show. He's outnumbered. Are you blushing?
I'm honored to be here. Yes, I'm blushing. I'm blushing through my makeup that went on at 6 a.m.
Oh, wow. No, but you've got some best-selling books. I'm not exaggerating.
No,
You've got one just out in paperback. Come on now.
Well, thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Oh, hickory, huh?
Andrew Jackson.
That's absolutely
Thank you.
right.
Hey, all right, let's get to the news. Serious pushback from President Trump as House Democrats step up their investigations despite reports that the Mueller investigation is nearing its end. The president tweeted this: "Now that they realize the only collusion with Russia was done by crooked Hillary Clinton, and the Democrats Nadler, Schiff, and the dim heads of the committees have gone stone cold crazy. 81 letter sent to innocent people to harass them. They won't get anything done for our country!" Exclamation point. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders in a statement saying, quote, "Democrats are harassing the president to distract from their radical agenda of making America a socialist country, killing babies after they're born and pushing a Green New Deal that would destroy jobs and bankrupt America," end quote. Meanwhile, Republican Senate Judiciary Committee member John Cornyn suggesting Democrats are getting desperate as the Mueller probe winds down. Watch.
They're worried the Mueller report will come up with basically nothing against the president as regards collusion. So that's why I think they're launching this full frontal assault, which, well, as I said, is a prelude to impeachment and will make sure that we can't get anything else done.
But Democratic House Judiciary Chair Nadler last night said Democrats are simply doing their jobs.
Congress is a check on the executive and on the president and vice versa. You must have that check. And we have to protect the rule of law. And that means we have to investigate and hold hearings and lay out for the American people if the administration is involved in abuses of power or obstruction of justice.
So, Brian Kilmeade, is this just simply them doing their jobs?
I don't think so. I mean, if you look at David Axelrod, who tweeted this out.
I saw that.
Yeah, and you see this, he's running the campaign for Barack Obama twice, and he could be fair on his podcast, and he said this on a tweet: "Maybe I'm missing something, but the hazard of omnibus document demands by House Judiciary versus discrete serial ones is that however legitimate the areas of inquiry are, the wide-ranging nature of it plays into the witch hunt meme," which does. This is all over the place. This is everything that ever might have happened. Adam Schiff threw out something on Sunday from another committee saying, "We think Russia might be laundering money through the Trump Organization." What is that based on? Benghazi, the investigation was on an attack. The IRS was based on specific incidents. We're going to keep looking through 50, 80 people until we find something. And I just think that's not what the American people really have patience for. In a way, it plays to the Republican narrative.
Marie, I don't know what the nod means from you if you're agreeing with Brian, so I'm just going to start there. Do you think any of what Brian is saying, based on history too, could the Democrats overreach here?
Well, there's always a danger of Democrats overreaching, and they need to be very careful about that. While they conduct these investigations, they need to keep pushing forward a policy agenda. They'll be voting on several bills this week on positive policy items, so those will be happening at the same time. But on the investigations, look, I think it is very clear throughout the last several years that the more information that comes out, the more we are shown evidence that the Trump Organization or Donald Trump himself or people around him lie when confronted with facts, that there actually is an oversight role here that Congress had not been playing. And I can read you quotes from 2016 from Republicans in Congress saying, when Hillary Clinton's elected, we already have 2 years worth of investigations lined up and ready to go. This in some ways is what happens when Congress and the presidency are of a different party, and there have been real allegations of criminal activity and evidence of that about Donald Trump and people around him that Congress has a responsibility to investigate.
What is the evidence about the president? The people around him, yes, they're knee deep in stuff they shouldn't have been doing. I mean, Paul Manafort's like an encyclopedia on how not to live.
That is true.
But what do you mean exactly for evidentiary material against the president?
Well, we saw last week documentary evidence that President Trump wrote checks, hush money checks, while president, that may have been part of a criminal activity in New York, according to the Southern District of New York. That's just one. And not to mention the criminal piece, he lied about it publicly, repeatedly. So even, the bar is in criminal activity. When the president is caught lying repeatedly to the American people, I do think Congress has a role.
He wrote a check to Michael Cohen, his personal attorney. He is clearly a Russian operative. I
didn't say that.
I want to address what Marie said before, because I agree with 50% of what she said, which is that, it's more than usual.
I like it.
I do not think that this is oversight, because, oversight is when you look into things that are going on while the president's campaigning or while he's in office, and now we've just gone way back into his personal life and everybody who he's ever met. But I do agree that elections have consequences, and that this is a result of, the Republicans lost, and so Democrats came in and they're like, we are going to make your life a living hell, and they have every right to do that because they won the election, and this is just how our system is broken down.
Before you go, Kennedy, I want to give us a little bit more material to work with. Representative Maxine Waters here on the president and what she calls obstruction of justice. Obstruction of justice reality show. Firing Comey, sending coded messages to Manafort and others that he has the power to pardon, lying about Trump Tower meetings, threatening Cohen's in-laws, attempting to destroy Mueller. What more do we need to know? Impeachment is the only answer. Kennedy?
I think the only thing that could work more in the president's favor than the Green New Deal and this litany of investigations is actually impeachment. I think all of this plays into his strength. And it's not to say he hasn't done anything wrong. He may have done a lot of things wrong. I think what people want from Congress right now is to figure that out. And I think that's what David Axelrod was saying to Brian's point, is figure out the most serious charge, the one that is the greatest threat to the Republic, and go after that. Because right now, it seems like Jerry Nadler and some of the other committee chairs are like the creepy guys on the beach at 5 in the morning with the headphones and the metal detector going, hoping for a gold bracelet. And they're really just kind of fumbling around looking for a crime. If a crime has been committed by the President of the United States, figure out what that is, and then go after that. I think that's a reasonable ask.
So the time you spent on Venice Beach, very clear. Right there. So I know you're from that beautiful area.
But would you also say it's important to when they're going through this, whole process, is to do it one by one and not look like you have an agenda. Just go out there and say, I want to go do the Judiciary Committee is in charge of impeachment. Let's see what's there. But for the longest time, we told Robert Mueller has all the power to do whatever he's doing. We just got to make sure Robert Mueller doesn't get fired. And now, a couple of days before the Mueller report's about to come out, they want to get the documents that Mueller had to create their own Mueller probe for the next 2 years. Well, at least let it come out and disappoint you or please you.
Part of the evidence, and I put that in quotes because there's no sight line, there's no ray line, subject line on those checks from Donald Trump Jr. and Alan Weisselberg and the president to Michael Cohen. That was evidence that he brought from a box that the FBI had returned. So we don't have the total scope on what those documents will mean. But what they do, Brian, is they do open up that cauldron of worms that says, is there more here? I thought that Democrats were going to wait until Mueller was finished. Is there room to do both? Can't they hold off on this until we see the Mueller report?
I would think so. But you know what I think happened, Harris? They saw how sensational Michael Cohen was as a witness, how compelling the 2 million people that watched, the way they got to ask questions. What I don't think they fully understand is that the rest of the people that they want to get front and center are not going to be cooperative. They're going to have answers to their questions. They're not going to look to turn the president into some evil villain like Michael Cohen suddenly seems willing to do. You put Don Jr.
But he was
or Eric,
only doing that on issues of race and cultural issues. When it came down to Russia collusion and the thing that I thought we were all watching for.
Well, he did give us new information about.
He said there was no way that he would know. He didn't have any evidence. No, basically was the answer.
Well, going over and over again.
But Thomas Massey showed that he's like, yeah, it was July 18th. That's when I heard the president talking about WikiLeaks, and Thomas Massey was like, this came out in June. Like, he pointed out how flawed Cohen's timeline
some of it did, but
particularly about WikiLeaks.
Well, that was our
conversation. Here's the thing. I mean, first of all, when you talk about going back into someone's previous history, Whitewater happened long before Bill Clinton became president.
Totally.
And
Elections have
Republicans-
consequences.
Bill Clinton.
Right.
Totally.
But
I totally
my
agree.
point in
All
terms
help Bill
today is,
Clinton.
I agree with Kennedy that we Democrats need to focus on the most important issues. Part of the challenge is, one of the reasons this was such a broad list is that they don't have all the facts. They actually don't know.
So why not wait until Mueller is
But
finished?
this is broader than Mueller. A lot of these investigations and issues they're looking into have either been siphoned off to the Southern District of New York or are separate from the Mueller probe. So they're different issues.
You don't want to wait for those facts to come forth?
But Mueller won't cover those issues with his facts.
But the
because
Southern District will.
He's only
Right.
looking at two specific
New
issues.
York will.
Congress has a constitutional role to get some of these questions answered.
I have a very important question. Why do you love Mike Pence so much?
I don't.
Yeah, you do.
No,
He'll become president. The president will get impeached. The Senate will throw him out, obviously, because he's done so many bad things. And then you'll have
but
president.
that's actually a good
I
point.
want to ask though, why we
don't like President Pence. You love Mike
just wanna make
think
him unelected,
Democrats
Harris.
will be able to
Want
do
him to be your
something
president.
different based on history.
Yes.
Right? So Newt Gingrich, former House Speaker, and others have said, you know, there was political damage. There was fallout to seeking impeachment. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's the gist of what they told
Okay,
me.
if Democrats...
And so if that's the case, why do Democrats
because
think that they'll
Donald-
come out any differently?
I think they're not exactly the same scenario. There is a concern about that, Harris, and I take your point. Donald Trump.
But impeachment is the same scenario.
If
It's the same
Democrats-
word,
But
it's the
Donald
same
Trump
meaning.
comes in with less political support than Bill Clinton had going into the process. Donald Trump's numbers are much lower
If
than Bill Clinton's
Democrats
were.
hated what Republicans did so much with investigations in Benghazi and going after Hillary, why are they doing the exact same thing?
Because we believe
10th power.
it's not the same thing. We believe here there are real issues that have not been looked
You
into
don't
that the
think
American
Republicans
people.
believed there were real issues
I think
with Benghazi?
In the eighth,
Really?
oops, I just threw my pen at Kennedy. By the
No.
eighth investigation, when all of the questions had been answered, by the eighth investigation, I think they were
Benghazi?
doing it for political reasons. By the eighth investigation, yes, I
They-
think.
Tell that to
they-
some of the
Four
families
of our
who
Americans
lost
have
family
died in
members.
that.
Yes, and I was
Yikes.
part of that administration, and I wanted these questions answered
I've
as well.
never heard you talk in the collective we. Until
As
now.
Democrats?
You always say, I don't represent every other Democrat. Do
But
you feel like you do on this issue?
I
More
feel
so?
like I represent Democrats on this couch. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I feel like my job is to bring forward the perspective from the party I love to be a part of.
If this
Yes.
was a uniting issue for Democrats more than some others.
I think Donald Trump is a uniting issue for Democrats.
All right, we'll move on. Fired FBI Director James Comey is making noise about the pending report from Special Counsel Robert Mueller. What he says must be done now. And the big action Democrats plan to take after one of their own again makes controversial remarks about Israel. Whether this will end the firestorm or make it burn brighter.
This is a very complicated issue. There's nothing complicated about being very clear that we must stand up against anti-Semitism, that we must stand up against that and stand for Israel.
League wrote a letter asking lawmakers to condemn Omar's remarks. That letter reads in part, Rep. Omar has argued that these statements reflect good faith disagreements about U.S. policy towards Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and the relationship between the two. This could not be further from the truth. Accusing Jews of having allegiance to a foreign government has long been a vile anti-Semitic slur that has been used to harass, marginalize, and persecute the Jewish people. Fellow freshman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defending Omar, tweeting, "It's not my position to tell people how to feel or that their hurt is invalid. But incidents like these do beg the question, where are the resolutions against homophobic statements, for anti-blackness, for xenophobia, and for a member saying he'll send Obama home to Kenya?" Meanwhile, House Republicans reportedly are considering a censure motion against Omar, and some are saying she should be stripped of her Foreign Affairs Committee. Ryan, first of all, I think it would be valid if we stopped coming back at when something happens, responding with the what about when someone did the same thing. Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, maybe if we could start by talking about things in isolation and then go back and say, you know, by the way, you did something similar before. Are you sorry about that? Yes, you are. Okay, great.
Okay, a couple of things. This is the first time I had seen that tweet about she's kind of sticking up for Congresswoman Omar by saying, yeah, she might have made some of these statements, but what about all these other things? And I guess they sent him back to Kenya as a reference to a 2011 town hall that Mark Meadows was holding where he said, I'm going to say that, but he put it into context. So I think that he was referring to that. This just happened over every week she seems to have a different anti-Semitic comment. The question is this. Minneapolis, did you know this is who you were sending to Congress? Does she represent how you feel? If she is, then you did a good job. If she misrepresented herself when she campaigned, they should step up and express some of their outrage. Number two, if you are Speaker Pelosi, what are you thinking putting her on foreign relations? Does she mimic what the Democrats want on the Foreign Relations Committee? What are you thinking putting her there? If she has these beliefs, put her into finance.
Okay.
And try not to, because she's doing irreparable damage to the party.
Marie, let me ask you, because we're looking at reports earlier today that Israeli intelligence is saying that they are basically on the brink of war with Gaza. So it's an important time between these two people. She is sitting on that committee, and she does seem sincere in her anti-Semitism, because as it keeps getting pointed out to her, she doubles down on it. It seems like again and again. So I don't know. How do you, from a foreign relations and a security, national security point of view, how do you reconcile all these things?
I think we shouldn't be in the business of judging sincerity from people. What she says publicly is reprehensible, even if she's not sincere, right? So I think that Speaker Pelosi is right to take a strong stand against the comments. So is the chair of that committee, Congressman Ingle, the Democrat. He has come down very hard on her comments. So I think that they're doing the right thing.
Well, but the chair says that she belongs on that committee because she represents a different perspective. She brings that perspective to the committee.
So I think setting aside the horrible anti-Semitic comments, the broader question you asked about in terms of what's going on in Israel right now and the relationship, the bilateral relationship, I do think there are questions we should be asking. For example, Prime Minister Netanyahu has taken Israeli policy, admittedly, very far to the right. That has made a lot of people in the United States, including a lot of American Jewish organizations, uncomfortable with current Israeli policy. We have to find out a way in this country to have those policy debates without
she have to be the person asking the questions, because here, let me just give you an example. If you were going to talk about what she called blackness, I've not heard it put that way. Anti-blackness,
called it that,
right? And if you were going to put that in the context of having a committee and you're going to talk about racism or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily need, to put the person on who might have said the most incendiary things. So yes, those are legitimate questions to ask, but I'm just saying, does everybody deserve a seat at the table? Or people who you think might further the conversation? That is just a question.
Good question.
I want to hit what you said about Minneapolis, though, because I covered the news there for many years. I would say this. When the JCRC's director speaks out and says he's been trying to school, and I'm putting words in his mouth with that, but he's been listening and having learning conversations, teachable moments with Omar, and he says that he doesn't understand why she can't go forth without making simultaneous, that is a quote, anti-Semitic comments. It's already an issue at home. It's a complicated issue with her. And I don't know how her constituency is going to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, Peter King represents me in my district. If Peter King was saying things that I thought were abhorrent towards Israel or anti-American, I would feel personally offended because...
Why are those things the same things to you?
What do you mean?
You just said if they're abhorrent towards Israel or anti-American. Are you equating those two things? Do you have to be pro-Israel to be pro-American?
I would say I'm comfortable with the American foreign policy being pro-Israel. I'm comfortable with saying they're probably one of our top 3 allies in the world. Have been the most consistent over the last 60, 70 years.
Different question.
But it's the same question.
I don't think you can be pro-American and anti-Semitic because we're supposed to respect
I didn't say anti-Semitic.
I
said anti-Israel.
I think that's a really important differentiation.
Yeah.
And questioning Israel's policy and being anti-Semitic, because I think Representative Omar leans toward being anti-Semitic, and that's incredibly problematic. And if Steve King is rightly stripped of his committee positions, then so should she, because the last time was a warning. And this time, and when is it going to stop? I really do think there are some deeply held beliefs here, which are incredibly troubling. And you have lawmakers like Ralph Northam, who's trying to get past a racist scandal, and it would be as if he were repeating the same mistakes in the present day. There's no internalizing from her, and there has to be a consistent set of rules.
And the West Virginia GOP put a poster up this week with her face next to the Twin Towers.
And that was inappropriate as well.
No, I'm just bringing up how nasty this
politics is a blood sport.
I wasn't saying any of it made it okay, Melissa.
All right. In a new FEC complaint, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her chief of staff accused of potentially violating campaign finance laws. This as the freshman Democrat calls for investigators to closely examine President Trump's finances. A live report with details ahead.
I think in oversight, we should be talking about taxes, 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 and his bank account, his bank account, his bank account, his financial statements, because that's where I think actually some of the most troubling practices are.
All right, we're back with the Fox News Alert. The search for dozens missing in Alabama is underway after the deadliest tornado's outbreak in 6 years.
Families returning to destroyed houses and communities totally reduced to rubble, as you can see. We began to learn more about the victims, 3 of them under the age of 10.
Aisha Husney joins us right now from the devastation in Beauregard, Alabama. And as we look behind you, there's nothing left standing.
There isn't. There used to be a house right behind me. Take a closer look, and there's nothing left. This is actually the home of State Trooper Robert Burrows. If you look over to the left of the house, you can see his trooper vehicle, the windows blown out by that tornado. He is in the ICU right now. He lived here with his wife and a grandchild that he was taking care of. And actually, if you look to the right here now, you can see a lot of baby items all over the place here in the yard. A lot of items belonging to that child that he was raising. Now, while he is fighting for his life, unfortunately, the whole nation mourning 23 people this morning. The names of victims will be released today. Some are not able to be identified right now, physically identified right now. And so the coroner is going to have to use, they're telling us, fingerprints to be able to ID those victims. They're going to meet with the families later on today. But you can just see the devastation is just immense here. The entire house, your whole life that you've built, your entire life just gone, shred into pieces. Brian, Steve Ainsley, back to you.
Thank you very much. Heartbreaking. All right, meanwhile, it had one of the country's highest rates of overdose deaths. But recently, Dayton, Ohio has seen those numbers plunge. And our next guest got an inside look to try to figure out why.
Here with more is what he learned about the opioid crisis hitting America's heartland, of course, in Ohio. Fox News correspondent at large, and you choose to be large in Cleveland. In that vicinity.
Larger than life in a middle-sized city.
But you wanted to check out Dayton, because you want to see what they were doing.
Well, Dayton, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Dayton was known as the overdose capital of the country for over a year now, ever since this heroin epidemic, this awful epidemic, visited us and hasn't gone away since 2015. It infected the whole 2016 presidential run. It decimated New England. Now Middle America is suffering the hard, really consequence.
Why Middle America?
Mostly the highway, Steve. I think it's the dope comes from Mexico, heroin with the fentanyl mixed in. It gets put in those semi-trucks. Comes up under old NAFTA, the new trade, comes up into the country. It absolutely devastated Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio mobilized. They got the federal government, the state government, the county and municipal government all involved. In today's part one, we're going to show you the police action against the heroin fentanyl epidemic. Tomorrow I'll take you into the jail. But this is Sheriff Rob Streck, the Montgomery County Sheriff in Dayton, Ohio.
We bring the world. We bring marked cars, we bring unmarked units, we bring in specialized drug teams, and we bring in air support. And we come in like a tidal wave.
A total of 10 different agencies, local, state, and federal, are involved. Right here, you see a kind of a potpourri of police agencies, all from the region, all working together in this joint task force, in this blitz.
Here, initiate a traffic stop, pull the driver and passenger out, searched the vehicle, and they found a loaded Glock. So the male passenger, he's going to go for gun charges. Officer here made a stop. He's now going to run his dog around here. We're going to see if it hits on the car, and if it does, then we'll search it and see if anything's in there. We put the money in one of these bags, and if the dog hits on the odor of drugs on that money, then that just kind of gives us more probable cause to seize the money. It's saying it has an odor of drugs on it. So.
And what happened here? What we had here was a truck with a female sitting inside. And when she got out of the vehicle, you can kind of see some of the things she dropped here that are usually drug-related, stuff like that. And when I picked that up, well, rocks of heroin in her possession, and she was arrested on that.
Ever get the feeling you're trying to sweep back the ocean?
I mean, sometimes, but we've always known that. We're going to fight. Montgomery County, we're going to fight. We got sick of seeing our loved ones die. Everybody came together and said, you know what, we're done with this. So we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that our loved ones get the help they need.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
72,000 Americans died of overdoses last year. This county has cut overdose deaths by 3/4. So they really are dramatically improving at least the survivability of the people using these drugs. You can talk forever about the responsibility of the pharmaceutical industry in getting these people hooked on opioids, on OxyContin. OxyContin prescription runs out, they turn to heroin, heroin laced with fentanyl, they die.
In part two, you're going to talk to people who have actually been in prison.
In the prison, the hardcore, again, with the criminal justice reform passed by the president a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully it will be treated more like a disease, but for right now, the prison's jam-filled with people whose lives are wrecked and who are wrecking the lives of their families, their neighbors, and so on.
And Purdue Pharmaceutical is being sued now because they make OxyContin and they thought irresponsibly prescribed it for the last 10 years, and now they just said we might as well just go bankrupt.
I think that bankruptcy is in the offing for Purdue. Purdue bears responsibility. I'm sorry to say they have blood on their hands.
Geraldo, we'll see you back here tomorrow with part 2.
Thanks, Stevie. Thanks.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Geraldo. Jillian's right behind you with some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. And let's talk about this for a second. Tributes pouring in for Luke Perry, the actor, dead from a massive stroke at just 52 years old. Earlier, Dr. Oz explained strokes in young people are much more common than you may think.
Roughly 1 in 7, 1 in 8 folks are under the age of 50 when they have their stroke, and that population of stroke victims is actually increasing. Older folks having a few, some less strokes, but the younger guys are having more.
Actress Molly Ringwald tweeting about Perry's death saying, quote, "My heart is broken. I will miss you so much, Luke Perry. Sending all my love to your family." Leonardo DiCaprio tweets, "Luke Perry was a kind-hearted and incredibly talented artist. It was an honor to be able to work with him. My thoughts and prayers go out to him and his loved ones." The actors, by the way, worked together on an upcoming film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That will be his last film. Lawmakers in Arizona demanding a state investigation into a high school accused of disciplining students for wearing MAGA gear. Officials say these students' First Amendment rights may have been violated when they were allegedly asked to leave campus. Protesters gathering outside the school in support free speech. The school insists the students were not punished for their political views, but that they were causing disruptions. Well, this high school wrestler performs on and off the mat. Watch what he does when there was no one to sing the national anthem at a tournament. Well, that is Isaac Bryant belting out the Star-Spangled Banner in Pennsylvania. His performance, you can imagine why, is going viral.
I wonder if he won his match.
I don't know,
If he doesn't have a future in wrestling, he clearly does in singing.
Yep.
That's great.
Another person who could have a bright future singing, I imagine, is Janice Dean if weather doesn't work out.
You know what? It is mostly sunny out here
The name
today.
of your
Can
brand
you
new
believe
book, out today, pick it up everywhere.
Oh my gosh, it is. It's a beautiful day in New York City, and there's my book out today. Thank you so much, Fox and Friends, my beautiful family here at Fox News Channel. Let's take a look at the map, shall we? It's mostly sunny, but it's cold. I'll tell you that much. 14 is what it feels like here in New York. Feels like minus 16 in Minneapolis. I mean, Mobile, Alabama feels like 26. So you know that is an Arctic front that has moved as far south as the Gulf Coast into Florida. Freeze advisories in place for the next several hours, and we're not going to get much above that. We're going to remain in the 40s and even 50s if we're lucky across the Gulf Coast and across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. That's where it remains cold. We actually could set some low records tonight, cold record lows. Then we're watching this West Coast storm that's going to bring more rain and mountain snow to this region. All right, what a great day. Thank you so much, you guys. Really special day today being with you.
You deserve it, Janice.
Aw, thank
It's
you.
always sunny when you're here.
Aw,
Right. And that wasn't even in the prompter. That came from the heart. And I'll talk to you on the radio in a little while. Meanwhile, 19 minutes before the top of the hour, many of Bernie Sanders' youngest supporters love the idea of socialism, but do they even know what they're talking about, what socialism is? Our next guest has a reality check.
Plus, you know them from HGTV hit Hometown. Ben and Aaron Napier are back with a new season, and they're here with some home renovations, some tips for you and your family coming up.
Make my hometown proud, gonna give them that sound every.
All right, socialist ideology continues to gain steam among young voters. But do far-left millennials fully understand what they're advocating? The new op-ed argues modern socialists, quote, point to Scandinavian-style socialism in nations like Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden as true socialism. One problem, those countries are not socialist. True socialism, in fact, is reflected in Venezuela, it's in Cuba, and the old Soviet Union. All are economic disasters and brutally repressive states. Joining us right now, New York Post columnist, Fox News contributor Mike Goodwin. This is exasperating to see people grasp at something that's not there. And the people saying Norway and Sweden are socialists has been wrong forever.
Yeah, you know, Brian, there is a lot of confusion, I think, particularly not just on the young people, but a lot of Americans. But I think of socialism this way. It's about grievance. It's that somebody else has more than I do, and that's not fair. And so in this age of inequality, where inequality is definitely growing in terms of income disparities, there is a growth of grievance among the young. And, of course, the political party on the left stokes that grievance by basically saying, if you have $2 and I don't have any dollars, I should get one of yours. We should all have the same. I mean, that is the opposite of capitalism. It's the opposite of free markets. It's really the opposite of liberty, but it is now the rage because of grievance that is being stoked.
Free college, free preschool, free Medicare for all. So everything should be free. Right. So Wall Street Journal did a poll, and NBC combined with them, and they asked millennials, what do you think of socialism? 72% very uncomfortable, 25% comfortable with socialism, 3% are not sure. My sense is that if you have 7 major candidates running essentially like Bernie Sanders, is the president right to label them socialist and make people evaluate what they're supporting?
I think the term generically fits because, as I say, it is about this idea that we can take your wealth and redistribute it. And I think underneath that is this sense of grievance that somehow if you have more than me, it's not fair. I'm entitled to the same as you. That, to me, is the animating impulse on the left, and I think that's the Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris's. They're trying to stoke that. Take some of theirs. They have too much.
Look at the Los Angeles, look at New York City. Look at how it's deteriorating. And what do they have? Now they're going to give people mandatory 10-day paid vacation, mandatory health insurance for everybody, including illegals.
And
what do you
minimum
have?
Wage?
And mandatory minimum wage. It's all anti-business, and on the surface it seems pro-worker, but it's not in the big picture.
No, because when you look at the money that's wasted in New York City, for example, the mayor and his wife blew through $1.8 billion over several years on programs involving schools and mental health issues that showed no results whatsoever. So, and it's not clear where all the money went. $1.8 billion. Think of all the taxpayers who worked to give that money to the city. It was taken from them to give to the city, and the city squandered it. That's a sense of grievance that we'll take your money and we'll use it better than you would.
Right.
There has to be a limit, but now on the left there are no limits.
It's just kind of interesting because you have 2 new candidates coming in saying I'm for a market economy. Governor Hickenlooper and Beto O'Rourke saying I'm for a market economy because they're beginning to panic. Michael Goodwin, thanks so much.
My pleasure, Ryan.
All right, straight ahead. You know them from the HGTV hit Hometown. Ben and Erwin Napier here with home renovation tips for you. But let's check in with somebody who needs no home updating, Sandra Smith. It is perfect the way it is, Sandra, I imagine.
Do you love our new home here in America's Newsroom? Brian, thank you, and good morning. We're waiting on an update now from Alabama, where we expect to learn the names of those killed by that deadly tornado there. Stunning new images continue to come in. Dozens are still missing. A press conference begins shortly. Plus, House Dems targeting President Trump from all sides, and the lawyer representing the ISIS bride now wanting to return home will join us live. Join us in moments in America's Newsroom.
This program in Napier made a name for themselves by renovating historic houses in Mississippi, and now season 3 of their hit HGTV show Hometown is underway, and the husband and wife duo are here to share their best tips to boost your home's value this spring.
Ben and Aaron join us now. Great to have you here at Fox in our studio.
Thank you so much for having us.
I love your show.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your
success.
success.
We like it too. It's pretty fun.
How'd you guys wind up in this business?
So it was social media is how we ended up on TV.
Yeah, we just renovated 2 houses for ourselves. I documented the whole process on Instagram, and HGTV randomly found me.
How'd you learn to do that?
It's just I have an art degree, and he's a woodworker.
Yeah, so it's perfect. It was more out of necessity because we have an art degree and we're a woodworker.
Now you got a hit TV show. You know, a lot of people are thinking about as it starts to warm up. People are thinking, you know, maybe a coat of paint, something like that. What's the most important thing to do to freshen up your kitchen?
So we're really big on making lists and prioritizing, like because nobody goes into a house and says, you know what?
Let's do everything.
Let's do everything.
The kitchen's usually where we start.
people
Yes, everyone ends up in the kitchen.
Yes.
We love a pretty kitchen.
It's the heart of the home.
We're renovating our kitchen right now.
Yeah.
And so what you want to focus on is what's going to be a big impact if you're not wanting to do the whole thing. So like countertops, that's a big surface area. Cabinet faces, and that's something that Home Depot offers. You can come out and they can come out and they can measure your cabinets, reface them.
And it's like 3 to 5 days and it's done. So you're not living in a renovation for 6, 7, 8 months.
And it doesn't look like a patch job. It's brand new.
Right.
It's brand new. It's
custom and
great.
new.
Yeah, and like she said, the installation is 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that's incredible.
You know, we don't even think about that, too. If you're on a budget, you can just do the cabinets. And then when you have enough money, you can do the counters.
That's exactly what we did when we bought our house. We started with the kitchen, and we did what we could afford. We waited a year, and then we did a half bath. And then we waited a year, and then we did the master bath.
Smart.
Now you're doing a bathroom.
I am, and in fact, we can't. My wife and I can't decide whether or not we
This
want
is
the
beautiful.
Carrera
You want it.
or the fake wood stuff.
I like this, too.
What does she want?
Carrera.
She wants. Let's see. She wants the fake wood.
Oh, I thought you were going to say she wanted the marble.
No, I'm kind of leaning more toward that.
Okay, we have marble floors very similar to that in our bathroom. It's wonderful. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and then that's, you know, again, same with a bathroom as with a kitchen, you don't always want to do everything.
Right.
And so you can do floors, or you can...
Like just update your fixtures.
Yeah, that's a DIY project that you can do yourself, or you can
How
call...
do you know what goes together, though? Like, if I saw this, I like this, probably better than that, so I'd pick this. But then how do you know what wood to put with it? How do you know what countertops to put with it?
This is my biggest pet peeve.
Okay.
Like white everything or gray everything. Like, guys, let's stop being afraid. You can use colors.
Don't make it too matchy.
Just don't.
Don't
People
make it
are
too
scared
matchy.
because
They're
once
scared,
it's,
but you shouldn't be. Yeah,
you
whatever.
spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I think, like, personally, if it were me and I were doing some gray Carrera marble, I would go with something warmer to warm it up, like a brass or wood somewhere in the bathroom.
Since you guys brought along a window, what did you want to tell us about windows?
So windows are one of those things, like if you're a first-time home buyer and you're wanting to put a little bit of money in it and you're wanting like a long-term investment, windows are great. And Home Depot Home Services, they can come out and, you know, they can measure your windows. They take care of everything for you.
They're so not fun, though. They're not like a kitchen or a bathroom.
I
So
know,
why do you spend the money on that?
Because it's fun when your power bill is much lower.
Yes, that's true.
exactly.
Then you have more money to do your bedroom.
To do
That's
the
right.
Things.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not drafty in the winter.
Right.
You're not
Exactly.
sitting there thinking, feels like a window's open.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Mississippi, it's more that it's not hot during the summer.
Yeah.
Exactly.